Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and we're excited today to have Rachel Brown on the show. Rachel has a practice. Tell us the name of your practice and just a quick overview of it.
Thank you. My practice is rose root circles, and I do inner work, somatic, erotic, embodiment, and parts work. Specifically, I like to work with people in life transitions and kind of some integration work, and also I call it the descent is the inner journey is the feminine hero's journey, is the journey like into the body, the experiences of the body, and like really coming home. The sensations of the body itself actually provide a map that creates a way forward, and also a sense of just resonance and peace with the life that's been lived.
And so we want to get to know you. So tell us like where you were born and what it was like being a little Rachel.
Oh, thank you for that sweet question. So I was born in Phoenix, Arizona. I love to be a child of the desert. I love to be in the sun. I love to be warm. And I'm the only one of my siblings who was born outside of Utah. My parents finished med school and went back to Utah, where they had 10 more children in 9 pregnancies, because my mother had 2 sets of twins. So I had a really unique experience of growing up in a huge family. In addition to my parents having a lot of kids, my maternal grandparents have 76 grandchildren. I'm number 16 of the grandchildren.
Wow.
So I really was born into kind of this dynasty that had like generations of lore, and a lot of people holding this this sense of destiny with the religion and the way it was practiced. So I really felt like I was in a myth growing up, like just kind of a lot of magical thinking about the family and the world and about life. And I grew up forged both by huge dissonance and also spirituality that I think remains like a very powerful part of my life experience.
Right. And you're the 96 grandchildren.
76.
76. That means you have 75 cousins from one set of grandparents.
Yeah, well, 60 something, because my siblings are 10 of the grandchildren too.
Oh, right, because of that.
Yes.
But then you have cousins on the other side as well. But not as many.
On my dad's side, it was a very different. They were LDS also, but grew up in New England, Connecticut, and did not herald such a prolific progeny as my mother's side of the family.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a similar thing where it's kind of like the opposite. My pioneer cousins number about 24, but my convert cousins number about 42, of which me and my 4 brothers are 5 of those. So I have 37 cousins on one side, 24 on the other, but it's the pioneer cousins that don't number as much. And I think it had a little bit to do with a little bit of poverty. And since it wasn't poverty on a farm, there was no advantage to having a whole bunch of kids. And so they limited their kids in the suburbs due to finances, and made more decisions that way. And so my dad was one of like 13 children.
Yeah.
And so there, the convert family side was big because of that one sort of dedication from my grandma.
It's really interesting to track how culture and necessity impact family planning and resources and that kind of thing. And on my mother's side of the family, it was very much like, this is the fulfillment of the Abrahamic covenant. We are so blessed to have this immense posterity. And this is how many have served missions. And this is how many have graduate degrees. And this is how many are doctors. And my grandmother loved to, she had 10 gingerbread cutouts, like it was paper, but they were like gingerbread men of her original children, and then 10 for their spouses, and then smaller gingerbread men that represented the grandchildren, and then the smallest row, and this is at the yearly party every year, is the great grandchildren, which now I know there's over 100. I haven't really kept track, but it made her so proud to like point at this this phalanx of posterity and be like, and she really was such a creative force, but it was very much like a a correlation with righteousness and willingness to live the gospel is to have these massive families and tons of kids. And so that was an expectation that I grew into, that I would also be some sort of married Mormon woman with all these children. And honestly, that gave me a ton of anxiety as a kid.
Part of your dissonance.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. This goal you have for me is not what I want.
Exactly right. And it was very, especially after turning 12, just I felt like it was kind of constantly something that really grated for me was any discourse directed towards women, or sometimes even well, actually I was really uncomfortable with a lot of the lessons that I received as a young person. I have better words for it now. Like I could say that I sensed that there was limitations and condescension in a lot of the rhetoric, and also just in a sense like it literally was limiting to a young person's future. Like there really is a sensation of being held back, of wings being clipped, right. Especially I would say around sexuality for young people. Like right. they're starting to spread their wings, and they're right there to clip the wings and make them wrong for the season of life that they're in. But I also was terrified of losing love or losing protection of the community. And so there were a couple times. So I learned to mask really well. I learned to participate in a way that got me accolades and give good talks and participate in ways that people responded. I performed. And every now and then the mask would slip where I felt like I actually was really terrified of Heavenly Father. Like I didn't trust him. I trusted Jesus more. He was kinder. But I read the entire standard works by the time I was a teenager. And that was a lot of the source of my, honestly, disgust and horror at the idea of this is the only thing that exists, right? This is the paradigm. We're the humans. We're on the earth for this reason. This is our Father. He's running this show. And I felt, I never felt a connection where I felt safe in that relationship. It was as though it was already kind of a mental fascist state with like sort of this irascible presence that I didn't trust, but yet I felt was watching me 100% of the time, even in my thoughts, even when I was alone. So that was really huge for a sensitive kid to experience.
How old were you again when you moved out of Arizona?
Oh, I was a tiny baby. My parents, like by the time they had my brother 18 months later, they were back in Utah.
But you would go back down to Arizona and experience the warmth and the sun? Or you mentioned it as if like you had remembrances of being warm in the sun and stuff.
There were trips sometimes that we went on, and sometimes traveling through Arizona on the way to Mexico was a big part of that. But I was just speaking in general. That's how I understand myself as the being that I am. I'm a very sunlight-oriented, solar-powered being.
Ooh, what was in Mexico?
Well, my mother's side of the family had connected with the little city San Carlos and Guaymas, and they just since the 50s had been driving down there every 3 years or so, and they would rent condos on the beachfront. And that really was paradise to me, was just being in the ocean with my cousins and just playing with the sand, and so magical.
So here's my connection with Guaymas.
No, I'd love to hear.
I never got to go, but my older brother, they did a big scouting event. Like instead of doing scout camp, they drove down to Guaymas, and then I don't know if they got abalone or some sort of other fish, but they had an enjoyable time. And so I know that exists, right? and it was just my brother, my older brother, came back with like a leather wallet that only cost like 40 cents. That was handmade by some of the local, population. Mm-hmm. And but the pesos to dollar value, I was learning about economics and world trade and other things all around that one little trip, to Guaymas. That they did snorkeling a little bit, right, and stuff like that. Maybe even diving, because the instructor was a pro diver. He would work on ships in the San Francisco Bay as a diver and would repair while a ship was in the bay underneath. He would do like welding and stuff underneath the water. And so
Wow.
he was very experienced in that. And so he tried to like share that with the scouts at the time that were, but
Mm.
he was released by the time I moved up into that age. And but I got to go hiking in the Sierras and do other things. I got to do
Mm-hmm.
my things, right?
Well, thank you for invoking the Sea of Cortez and all the beauty of that area.
Yeah.
Mexico is such a vibrant treasure.
Yes, it is. And so you when you were 12 and 13 and 14 and stuff, were you in young women's leadership or anything like that?
So I was a little bit of a controversial figure, a controversial figure in young women's, and I think most who remember me then would kind of agree that there was this duality, where there were a lot of times I would get triggered in sacrament meeting or in class, and it was almost like a physical reaction where I would kind of like have to go calm down and breathe through it, and I might compare it to something like a panic attack, although I didn't have that language at the time. I would have said something that was incredibly self-blaming, like something's wrong with me, but I'm reactive. And then the other piece was that I did have callings. I think my first calling in the presidency was in the Miami presidency. I think it was when I was a few years into it, but I did have presence when it was like planning an activity or um, giving this talk for the stake youth conference, and I kind of shined in those ways. And so it was sort of like it was both there. Like I could do the thing and I could do it really well and I could get approval for it, and that would kind of feed me and make me feel like things were okay. And then also at the same time crushed, terrified, so uncomfortable being in a female body and being a young woman kind of developing in my erotic energy and feeling and like I'm taking these messages very, very seriously. I don't see how I can have a life that I love. I don't see how I can have um, a marriage that I would aspire to. It all feels very controlling. It feels like my voice isn't even wanted anywhere here. I'm not invited to these spaces. I'm told what to do. And so there was sort of both. Like I both thrived and sort of started engaging in these inner process of self-sabotage because I was not able to. My upbringing had kind of resolutely inoculated me from trusting any outside voices. I knew this was the only thing that existed. I knew it felt really unsafe and really uncomfortable. So I knew that that was my lack of adherence to the gospel, my lack of testimony, my spiritual weakness that made it seem that way. And so it was like pretty deep vortex. And it was a long time before the light kind of got in and I was able to unhook my brain and be like, oh, maybe I can see myself separate from some of this. It was just, there was not any separation. There was only fusion for a long time.
And did you do personal prayer and feel warmth and feel connection, or is it kind of like you were praying to a wall?
Mm. I love how specific that question is. I again felt compelled to pray. And there were a lot of things I did sort of because I had the sense that I would get in trouble if I didn't do them. I needed to be in line. Um, and I had a lot of almost angry prayers on my own, and it's sort of
Like
this
wrestling with God.
self-condemnation. I don't understand this and I don't understand that. And I don't understand why if you're really a loving being, why you would speak to women this way. I don't understand why Emma would be spoken to this way in section 132. Or am I supposed to feel love? And then feeling like I'm actually going to be in trouble. And so I need to be more sycophantic. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for all these things. I really am. I'm grateful for my family.
Not your
Grateful.
blessings.
Yeah. And I'll say that was kind of my experience with personal prayer. Praying with others also became a thing that I could do in a polished and excellent and completely performative way.
You would say all the things, cover all the bases.
Bless everybody in the room. Bless
Would you
everything they
would you
have.
even like pray for moisture if it was really drought?
I, I,
You know, there's certain terminology that go into like a good prayer, right?
Exactly. We want to make sure that we have healthy and nourishing meals, and that we have
Right. Nourish and strengthen our bodies,
recognition of
etc.
precipitation to satisfy. But yeah, I don't know if I prayed specifically for moisture. My thing was always saying things in a different way, saying things in a way that felt powerful and beautiful, but in a unique way.
Because
Yeah.
I know some people would like be grateful for the many blessings they got, and other people would like list 15 blessings that they're thankful for.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
so
I'll give examples. My many blessings. Here they
that's
are,
right.
one by one.
Yeah. Yeah. Thankful for a living prophet,
Mhm.
stuff like that. And so as you're entering high school, were you thinking about direction or anything like that?
Hmm, 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 hmm.
And did you participate in uh, extracurricular activities?
Yes. So in high school, I was in student government. So I did sort of the skits and assemblies and things. And then I was also in the service club and choir, but I started volunteering a lot in my sophomore year of high school. And that sort of created, in a sense, like almost a career path for me at that age, because I decided at age 13 or 14 that I wanted to be a social worker. And so I just started, like, I volunteered in an elementary school, I volunteered at the rest home, and it was sort of there are a lot of things I can point to that kind of went into that, but it was in some ways a way to discharge my anxiety about the dread I felt with church stuff, because I did actually feel a huge energetic payoff when I would be with people and kind of immerse myself in a supportive role. And so I really clung to that because it made me feel good. It also created a dynamic where people looked at me as good or having something worthwhile to share or give. And I also really, really relished that and kind of needed that at the
Did
time.
you like the song "Give," said the little stream?
I think that song holds a precious place of 80s nostalgia in my heart,
Mhm.
as many of those old classic songs do.
Yeah, and I was also thinking that like when I was part of the baby boom, and
Mhm.
so when I was teachers quorum president, there were like 24 names on our rolls, and only 12 were active and 12 were inactive. But
Mhm.
still, 12 teachers is a lot to have. So only took 2 teachers to set up the sacrament trays. So I, as a president of the teachers quorum, could give assignments, and so people only had one assignment a month, right? And but like when my kids were going through things, they were lucky to have 2 teachers there. And if they didn't have 2 teachers, they had to get a priest to help set
Yeah.
up the sacrament and stuff like that. And so there was just this uh, dearth of kids, right? And so what was it like in your ward? Were there a healthy amount of kids or
Yeah, I think
bare minimum?
I was in Ogden, Utah, and we lived near this neighborhood called Shadow Valley. Let's say, yeah, it was probably the most confusing thing was it was not that there were tons of kids. It was more like it was interesting how the social dynamics would be different at school and different at church, but we were all kind of in both places. But I remember that being like um yeah, just an interesting thing that there was sort of the church persona and the school persona. Sometimes they would merge, and sometimes it was like um yeah, I think myself and my siblings all struggled in the ward that we happened to be in some ways.
Right. I can imagine that school would include the boundaries of like 3 or 4 or 5 wards.
I think it might have even been more than that with
Yeah.
how yeah, with how dense it is in northern Utah, but I don't know those numbers to speak to them necessarily. But certainly it was like my school experience also included like going to seminary, like there was like a
Release time.
presence and flow, right? Release time. Yeah.
Mhm. And so, and then also you being the eldest, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is, I'm in the middleist. I'm the middleist.
Yeah.
So I experience a little bit of younger siblings and a little bit of older siblings.
Mm-hmm.
I know that my oldest brother was damaged in a way, because when he was 10, he was like 5 feet 8 inches tall, and they assumed since he was big, he was mature enough to
He was a little
babysit, so
guy inside.
save on a babysitter, right? So they would say, okay, we're going to go out to dinner, make sure the clothes in the laundry basket are folded, and vacuum and give chores and watch the kids, his four younger brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just um, too much for him. And so we would fight. And, you know, we would say, you're not our mother. And he'd say, I'm not folding all these clothes by myself. Right. Because I have duties and stuff. But so it didn't sit well with him, you know, that he had to do all these things. So you observed your mom taking care of lots of younger siblings, and you probably helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm hearing your story about your brother and how he was kind of put in a caregiving position before he really developed the maturity for that. And I I there's just so much that happens with that many people and that many kids. I have a lot of sweet, really nourishing memories, as well as times that I did feel pressured or ways that I can point to patterns that kind of created specific pressures for me as the oldest over time. I loved when my mom had babies. Like it was magical to have the new baby come home. I loved to go sit in the dark room when she was nursing the baby at night, and that was like the easiest place to talk to her and kind of have her attention and tell my stories. So I remember I'd love to just go sit while she was in with one of the babies. And then also um, it kind of, yeah, I don't know, the burdens of caregiving, I guess, didn't really trouble me super much because they also were convenient and pleasurable in some ways. Like when I had my driver's license, I suddenly was like now in charge of driving the kids everywhere, which I'm sure was relieving for them, but I was excited. I was like, yeah, I will spend my time on the road now listening to music. And in a way it fit with just the cycles and seasons of where everyone was. Like I was available to do that, had lots of energy, and then also was self-protective of myself at times, and like would kind of like fly off to the forest if I was stuck somewhere. And so I do have siblings that have taken even more responsibility in some ways of like making sure that the meal is done in the right way. I am more of a Mary than a Martha in that in that sense. Like
And I was wondering if your volunteering was a way to remove yourself from the busy family a little bit and explore the world,
mm-hmm.
not out of you know, a desire that you didn't like your family, but just to do other things and to be
Yeah.
clear your head a little bit even.
Yeah, that's insightful. I did have kind of this pull of I want to be in it and I want to see the community and I want to understand what is going on the planet and be part of it. And there has always been kind of this pull um, as I've grown and explored. Like I love being with people and knowing and feeling them. And then yeah, there was also, I think, just as you mentioned it, volunteering was my way of balancing what I felt like. This feels like absurd to say, but it's a true part of my story. I knew myself to be, even at that young age, a really sexual person. And I knew at the time that it wasn't okay. And so volunteering was also a way to kind of give back for just existing as a teenager, as a sexual being. But like, look, I'm working hard. I'm being with the suffering, and I'm giving in this way. So it was a way to equalize what I felt like inside. I didn't feel like a good person.
Right. And I know that to me, the movie that exemplifies like a desire to see the world and
Mm-hmm.
also the duties to remain at home is It's a Wonderful Life with
Mm-hmm.
James Stewart, where he wants to get out of Bedford Falls. I want to see the world. He's got stickers on his suitcases, and he's always half packed, ready to go. But he never, just as he's about to leave, he's forced into these family responsibilities and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't really watch the movie when I was young. I wished I had. You know, it's like, oh yeah, whatever. But like, I was a young adult when I finally like cried to that movie. Prior to that, I hadn't really cried at movies. Like, oh yeah, they're making everything up, right?
You
It's
felt
not real. But I connected with him getting the reward of all of his life of giving finally, where when he needed it the most, he got the payback from the community, sort of. And that meant a lot to me as a young adult just before I got married.
powerful themes.
So in high school, did you feel like you were preparing yourself for college?
In high school, I'd already started to talk about how I was going on a mission.
Mission first.
And I made this a thing partly because it was powerful to claim that I wanted that experience for myself and then feel all the backlash, because there was a lot of response that I would get. And I think that that generated a sense of determination, like, oh, I am going to do this. And yeah, and I did. I thought about, where I'm going to go. Am I going to go to the Lord's University and make my family happy about that? Or am I going to go to the other university that is the worldly university and learn what I can there? But of course, there's a certain level of devotion if you just make your entire life about church. So there's these were kind of the settings that were setting themselves up for the next chapter.
So did you apply to both places?
I did, and I got in and ended up choosing BYU after
Yeah, because I mean, you could say the University of Utah, lots of general authorities graduate from there, right? Like half of them graduate from there, half of them go to BYU, and so it's there's ways you could
justify either as godly. Yeah.
And so, but was there an attraction to be further away from the family to go to BYU at all? I guess you lived in the dorms.
I'd lived in the dorms. Not that I was conscious of at the time. If we were to time travel and bring up 18-year-old Rachel, she would say, no, I love my family. I'm actually sad that I'm now an hour and a half away. And for much of my young adult life, like there wasn't really a push to differentiate. That was kind of the golden age of, I have all these siblings. There was a time after my mission, this is skipping ahead a little, where there were 7 of us at BYU. We were sharing a car. We would go out to lunch. We would visit each other. We would go home on the weekends to my parents' house and bring who we were dating. And that was a wonderful time. Like that was a time to really enjoy kind of the numerousness of my siblings. Or kind of
you were the pioneer going to BYU for your family, in a way, for your siblings.
I guess in the sense I was the first one to do everything next, because I was the next one up for that developmental stage.
Right. You felt a duty to set the pattern, to do the things for your siblings as well as to please your parents.
Yeah. Again, I wouldn't have used those words, but I was super invested emotionally, energetically in the family business. So took on all kinds of energy roles that people didn't explicitly ask me to, but it was I considered it my job to like uplift, take care of everybody's hearts, make everyone feel connected, make everyone feel good about themselves, like including my parents. And so there was a lot of, like truly like devotion to the original family unit was on my mind more than breaking away at that point.
Did you have any type of career plan at first, or was going to BYU just preparing you for your mission? So you made sure you went to all the devotionals, took all the religion classes.
So that dissonance I talked about had also remained with me. And so I would say I didn't necessarily go to all the devotionals because I would get just super triggered by everything, by the language.
Would you know ahead of time who was talking and what the subject might be, and you'd say, oh, I better not go to that? Or did you just
specific memory? But I do think there's kind of awareness. Like I think there's signs up or different ways they tell you who it is, who's coming. But it was going to be social work. That was you asked about my career path. So that was what I chose. I never deviated from that. So started taking prereqs and getting ready to apply for the program.
Right. So where did the lower division, so you went 2 years and then you went on your mission? Or 3 years? Did you go 3 years?
I was 21 when I left on my mission, and so I was almost done. I think I had 2 semesters left after I came
Wow.
back.
Yeah. You're sort of at the beginning of when women were choosing to go on missions more than choosing to stay at home. It was because when I was younger, it was the women that couldn't get married would go on missions,
Right.
right? And then
And
all of a sudden it became more of a thing, but there was two camps. There was some people supportive and some people like, oh, you're you should start a family instead
right,
of
right.
on a
Or
mission.
or the reflection of like, you don't need to go on a mission because you're conventionally attractive.
Right.
So why would you even say that? Like, you are not fated to be. And I was in the mission field from 2005 to 2007. So it was just before the age change was in 2012. So
Right.
there, all of
Well,
that language was still there.
yeah. I mean, right now they still say it's voluntary for women, but mandatory for young men.
Mm-hmm.
But women are choosing it at a
Mm-hmm.
high rate,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and
Yeah.
shows some dedication.
I guess I can't speak to the the draw currently for young women now because I feel like things have changed so much. But I saw it in some ways as a coming of age opportunity, where in a sense it's sanctioned by your community for you to actualize as a person in this way, for you to be a teacher, for you to be in power, for you to be take on spiritual power, and I don't necessarily I don't necessarily feel like it's a the full experience of autonomy enough to like get some of the growth, but it does offer a huge growth experience. And I saw even as a young person the potential of if I give myself that growth experience, I'm going to be different than if I just sort of like become the spouse of someone who served a mission and then he is the spiritual leader in that sense. I really saw that power differential and did not want it. I was like, I'm gonna at least gonna have my own dark night on the mountain and like my own um, process of coming of age in this way. I don't want to just come of age as a wife. For me, it
Yeah.
doesn't feel good to me, even though
Right around then, something I wasn't aware of, but apparently there's also two camps of return missionary men where there's no way they would marry a return missionary sister. They were not going. They were just, and I wondered if that's they were afraid of the of 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 having someone exert more spiritual input, right? And they wanted to be king of the castle and lord of the manor on their own, and didn't really want to share in the spirituality leading the family, uh,
mm,
or if they they noticed that sister missionaries were more empowered, and they just didn't want, in general, a more equal person to marry. I don't know. It's just a strange thing. I never heard of it before until I was watching Maven Brody's Mormon Story,
mm-hmm,
where she talks about people saying, why would you want to go on a mission? Because a lot of, you know, boys don't want to marry a return missionary girl. And it's
yeah,
like, why would
there was
I
some
thought that would be great. And I didn't serve a mission. My wife didn't serve a mission, but I thought it would be great to. I saw lots of young couples where maybe they met their spouse on the mission, but didn't, marry until, afterwards or something like that. But certainly I didn't experience that, but maybe it was more of a Utah thing because there's more, like I say, in California, there was only like 8 people in high school from our ward,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I remember there were some elders on my mission who made that comment, and I remember feeling that it was disrespectful to the work and the effort. But I think there's probably all kinds of expressions of insecurity to like feeling like women need to be controlled, to feeling like particularly insightful about the qualities and the potential advantages that that could bring. But
So you mentioned dissonances. Did your college experience brighten some of those things and make you wonder about serving a mission, but you went anyway? Or what was that like?
oh, I appreciate being able to visit some of these times. I found I there was just a lot of pain for me in the experience of being a woman in the church. And I bring my own sensitivities to that. I bring, at this point, like my own patterns of dissociation and resistance to that. But I found BYU to be really uncomfortable, and a place where I felt like I needed to hide and mask, which I did to some extent of efficacy. It was not a safe place, emotionally, and it was a place, where as a young person I explored and dated a bit, and I realized pretty soon also I wasn't I wasn't bought into the dating to get married energy. It was really, I found it to be like just a pace that didn't feel like it honored anything about me. And so often, like being on dates and not being able to say no to dates, or not being able to like really fully express myself in that situation, almost felt like dating itself was like another pattern of, kind of trauma acquisition, because it just mirrored church meetings, mirrored lessons, mirrored meetings with church leaders, like had the same feeling to it of like, this is an evaluation, and I know that the truth is I don't want any of this, but I also need to please these people, but they don't feel safe to me.
Right. And I imagine there was more than one or two young men that told you that God told them that you were to be their wife. Did that happen?
Not in the classical sense, like
Okay.
in a Jack Wayland sense of like this is actually being put out. I think I was a little bit difficult in the way that I moved for even like the men around me, and I think that they were often like actually put off by when I would tell them these are the things that I struggle with, and then I would kind of list these these issues that I had, and then a lot of times it was something like, you need help, like you need a blessing, you need, direction from some kind of person who can guide you. You are confused and you're lost, and this is really sad. And so that was a lot of the communication, kind of repeated over years.
Right. So because you were open with people, God wouldn't tell them that you're the one for them as much.
I think I probably looked like a huge liability. Super,
Right.
super unconscious of what I was doing. Yeah.
What was your funnest date, if you can think?
Before my mission,
Yeah.
that's going way, way, way back.
Was hiking fun? Or was it a group thing, you think? Or
Mm,
because that's part of college life, right? Is the social scene. And for some people in some colleges that aren't Mormon, it's drinking and having sex and doing all the things, rock and roll, right? But for Mormons, it's like going on interesting dates, or spending time at the creamery or whatever.
well, I would never say no to a mint brownie from the creamery.
There you go.
I probably did at some point every cliche Mormon date that you can think of, including like just the long tiered dates where you go mini golfing and then you go out to dinner and then you come back for games, and at no point during that time do you, behave authentically or comfortably, but it lasts for like 16 hours. So, but I do remember, there was someone I got to know who would write music for me and also shared music with me that blew my mind. And so I think like the most pleasant things were when I would get like, he would burn me a new CD, or one time, we went out and do you know BYU campus at all?
A little bit.
There's this pond at the bottom of Mazer Hill, and he had hid his guitar there, had his roommate hide his guitar, and then he played a song he wrote for me. The bottom.
So it was like in the bushes, and he surprised you with it.
Yes, it sounds creepier when you say it that way. Blindsided by original music.
Right. So yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah. I think there's some archetypal like delights and pleasures just to like being that age, like kind of regardless of the specifics of the context. And I truly enjoyed that.
So you're of an age where when you got your mission call, was it a big family get together?
Oh my goodness, yes. And it was it was a little bit of a humbling lesson because this is like old family lore, but my grandparents had been mission presidents in Argentina, and my mother was born there, and several of her siblings were born there. So my grandparents really had this huge sense that Argentina is like the promised land, celestial mission, and Castellano is the real Espanol. And so, and I was actually living with my grandparents for a bit and working at the time it was a camp at the Utah Boys Ranch. But I was working nearby, and my grandparents had let me know it would really be so meaningful if I got called to Argentina. And I, of course, was like, well, of course I want to get called to Argentina. And then I didn't get called to Argentina, and I did get called stateside. And that like rocked everyone's collective worlds, which was really painful for me. Because
they probably thought, well, Rachel's not as spiritual as we thought because God doesn't recognize it.
It was a sign of things to come, I guess. But they did have this idea that if you got called stateside, you were morally deficient in some way or must have a health problem. So
you can be closer to home, yeah.
But I did get to speak Spanish, and so I remember my uncle telling me after they all went silent on the line when I told them, I was like, "It's Spanish speaking," and he said, "Oh," he's like, "Well, you can't do better than speaking Spanish." So it was reconciled, but it was another thing that kind of showed me all of the arbitrary measures of either progress or goodness that really didn't correspond to anything at all, but nevertheless caused like a ton of anxiety and mental anguish for really.
Like, we believe in prayer, but no matter how many times your mom and dad prayed that you'd go to Argentina, it didn't work.
Didn't work. So what's the true story here?
And where'd you go?
I was in Houston, Texas, Spanish.
Houston.
Yeah. And I've really integrated. I think there was a time shortly after I left the church, I felt just so embarrassed that I participated in the mission at all, and that I had been invited in people's homes and been disrespectful of their traditions. Because it really is it's a settler mindset. It's a colonial mindset. It's an imperialist mindset. It's I will take over your land. Your baptism didn't count. Your marriage didn't count. You need to do it this way and also pay us money. Like it's a
privilege.
Like, yeah, but I've sort of I have more of a compassion for this. This is like what I really believed was the best thing for the world at the time, and I really did show up with that true heart for what I understood at the time. And now I find it really fascinating that I lived that way for a moment, that I had those experiences in that identity in the world. And I think it's just another kind of jewel in my crown of life experiences. It's a really unique one to have.
Yeah. And so let's see, my daughter served in Chicago North, Spanish speaking. The years she left, probably a year after you came back, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And she enjoyed it. She also learned about cooking in authentic, that the Hispanic people up there were either Guatemalan or something else, more like Central America, sort of. Were yours mostly from Mexico? And did you learn any cooking techniques?
I met people from everywhere country. I loved how much I got to learn, and I was like a little sponge as far as just culture and honestly, like just the beauty of expressiveness, and also just what I witnessed and experienced was just beautiful humanity, and in some ways like something that I hadn't been exposed to before, and everything feels like it was just a huge expansion of me as a person. And I hope that the people that I engage with, like, because there were all kinds of engagements, from hostile to to tense to loving and melting. And I hope that the people that really got to see me, like not the missionary veneer that I was putting on at the time that had this agenda for them, but the people that I connected with my heart, I hope they felt my love truly for them. And I felt it from them, like just beautiful moments, like sometimes even not verbally, but it is a way of being in the community that is totally different than any other life experience.
Because, like, amongst all the dissonance, love is the one true thing that's a human-based thing. That, you know, I've met people of different beliefs, and I love them, and I don't care about their beliefs, right? But I feel like have been blessed by being near some people, right?
Yeah.
And so you probably experience that a lot.
There's such a beautiful potential between humans to just light each other up and feel each other. And that did happen often.
Okay, so you finish your mission, come home, give your speeches. You're focused on graduating now.
Yes. And oh gosh.
And so you're applying for grad school at the same time now as your last
Actually,
year?
I took an in-between year.
Okay, a gap.
Graduated, and then I took an in-between year and went to work I volunteered for an NGO in Puebla, Mexico. So
Wow.
I went to go live there for about 6 months and did so many things. I helped with some of the programs for their rural families, and the NGO focused on supporting families and children who were working or living near the crucero. Like, so they're like swallowing fire or selling things or like working at these markets that are like um, aren't super safe for kids. And then this agency would help the kids go to school and find other sources of income, other different things. So I got to essentially learn about social work in Mexico, which was amazing and very eye-opening for me.
When
And
you're in your gap year,
then,
did you explore any ancient ruins or anything?
there was a pyramid in Cholula nearby, and I did go there, and I saw so many beautiful things there. I really love to explore churches too, like churches and cathedrals, um, and cemeteries. I lived right by this beautiful cemetery, and I would go there and write. So, yes, I enjoyed a lot of the beauty of the land and the people there.
Wow. And so did your gap year experience on your resume pay off?
I think it was just supportive of everything that I did next. It deepened my proficiency with Spanish. It gave me a little bit more clarity and orientation to specifically how I was experienced as active Mormon at the time by the people who were at the agency who had no affiliation with the church or any reason um, to, I guess, like collaborate with that aspect. So it was an important thing for me developmentally, and yeah, it wasn't an issue to just go to grad school right after that.
Did you try to convert anybody, or did you sort of tamp that urge down?
So I mentioned to you a little bit about how I experienced God and how I experienced like the scriptures and the lessons. I felt similarly about trying to convert people. It always felt I could feel when I was crossing over into almost like sales territory, and it felt like a collapse inside me. I despised it. I didn't want anything to do with it. I just wanted to be with people in a sense of like hearing their story in an affirming way and like reflecting their beauty to them. I did not actually want to pitch the church to them, but I did feel like I was supposed to. And so at times I would force these really awkward interactions that when I recall the moment, my body was like, don't do it. But I was like, I have to say this awkward thing. I have to make it weird now. I have to be like, guess what? I also have a religion that I can talk to you about if you don't want that. Okay, cool. Well, thank you.
Right. But at least not on your mission, you were free to tamp it down a little bit.
It's easy. It's a little easier on the mission because you have the glaring name tag, and so if anyone wants
it's going to come up.
They'll let you know right away. And if they want to avoid you, they make that really clear.
Right.
Yeah, but it just never felt natural to me. Even when I was at my most believing, it didn't ever feel good to share.
Okay. And so let's see, where'd you go to grad school? And I guess you're learning human sexuality in these classes and development and stuff. And are you starting to think about human connection, sexuality, or anything yet? Or are you still too Mormon?
I'm wanting to respond to that thoughtfully. So at that time in my life, I was aware of my sexuality as like the experience of being in my body and being with my turn on. It was not, sex was not something that I felt safe to um, create in that dimension, or even like personally fantasize about things in my life. It really felt like it was off limits unless I was married and in this context, and I didn't know that I would be able to do that. And so at that point, I think I just tried not to think about it. And also at the same time was like really, really, really attracted to men, and kind of felt it,
Yeah.
felt the energetic presence of it in my relationships. But mentally, I had not yet turned to any of the realms that I find myself working in now, or any of those mediums. Not at that point in my life.
Yeah, because like in the temple, it's like your sexuality is within the bounds the Lord has set, right? And so you're experiencing those rules, but you're also experiencing love and attraction and other things that you have to keep to yourself, sort of.
Well, and I'm also cognizant that I'm going to be asked in an interview at some point about anything I've done. And I've really bought into the belief that if there's anything I have to confess, this person is going to know. And so there was some fear around sexual expression and around like the repentance process. And if I go astray, like how will I ever know if I'm okay again? And so just a huge degree of kind of control, paranoia, and shutdown. And that's why I say a big part of me being able to eventually actually release myself from the church was the activation of my erotic energy in life. And that while it was dormant, I still kind of remained in that childlike control state. And then when I did start experiencing not just sexuality, but also the blood mysteries of pregnancy and birth, that it was like I embodied myself as the woman I am. And the ideas didn't matter in the same way because I felt and I understood who I was. And so where men talking to me about being a woman had so much control over my life, and I gave so much power there. It's like when I took the power in myself to create life the way that I did and the way that I experienced it, it was just undeniable that the power was in me. And it had been a distortion.
And so where do you end up at grad school?
Oh, I went back to BYU.
Back to BYU.
Yeah, I went to ASU for a minute and then was seduced by the low tuition. So have to live with that for the rest of my life. That I have both my degrees from BYU.
That's right. The tithing money
with no debt. So
your parents' tithing money and your tithing money pays off in the low tuition. It's like the only way we can get back, in a way, some of our tithing. But and then where do you start practicing? In Utah still, I guess.
Well, an important thing here is I got married between my first and second year of grad school, and then I got pregnant 3 weeks after I was married. And so my understanding was that I wouldn't work. I would just now raise my child. But I did end up working for 7 years at Family Support and Treatment Center. It's now called Family Haven in Orem, which is this beautiful nonprofit where I learned, to be a play therapist, and learned about Santre and Jungian art, and it was really beautiful. But the story with my first husband and with the baby that now became kind of the spiritual gnosis of opening up to a wider ring of being and being able to extract ourselves from the inherited ideology.
So do you remember your experiences feeling pregnant and having the baby grow and seeing and feeling the heartbeat and different things, and how did you process that?
It was really important to me that I didn't want to give birth in a hospital. And I didn't want to have, at the time, I didn't want a male doctor to be instructing me or talking to me or anywhere near me while I was giving birth. And I got really clear really quickly that I actually wanted to be with women. I wanted a midwife who knew, like an old witchy midwife who like knew women's bodies and knew how to read their bodies in a really just present way. And I wanted
Yes.
women to come and
Like experiential instead of clinical.
yeah, and I don't know that I thought about it in those terms, but
Mm-hmm.
I knew with all my heart that my body would not open if my legs were up in stirrups. And I had people like kind of like from the outside, like telling me, I just had this image and I'd never had a baby before. This is all very new to me. I really had only been sexually active now for 3 weeks. And now I'm looking at having this baby, but just, I knew I craved learning about being a woman. Now that I'm really kind of here in my moment, in this moment that's undeniable, I wanted to learn about being a woman from women and from women I admired, who were not, I think, like just in the system, in the corporation in the same way. And so when I sought out those experiences, it really just started to empower me, and I started to listen to my voice in a different way. I started to take myself more seriously. I'd be like, no. I said, no, I actually really don't want that. That's okay if everyone else does that. That's not okay for me. And I'd really never exercised that before. Um, and my family, who I told you I was really, really up in the family business in every way, there was some upset and kind of, I was the first one to have a child. I think there was some understandable differentiation about the level of um, respect I gave to my parents in the sense of like letting them make life decisions for me, like until way late in my life. That ends now. You had your babies. This is my moment for my baby. And I'm the one who will have this child, like get this child out of my body. And so respectfully, like I really need to listen to my inner voice now and do it my way. And I need to grow here and have these lessons in my own way. And that was really the first time I defied my family about anything. And it was big energy, and that also illuminated a lot for me, and I got to see, and it kind of created neural pathways for me where I was able to say no. I don't want it. I don't want that. And it was almost like saying no to the medical model of birth opened up a pathway where I could now say no to the general authorities, or I could say no to a local church leader. And it unlocked that ability, which I think is like very, just very connected to, again, like the blood mysteries and erotic energy starting to be more present in my life. I think I was able to do that then because all of that power was actually activated in me, where before it was like really, really, really dormant.
You regained your self-sovereignty.
Yeah, I think that's a way to say that feels true.
And so you're experiencing a child, you're working,
And my husband and I are deconstructing.
and you're starting to deconstruct because
Yes.
now you have authority over yourself, and you're going to decide which direction you're going to take yourself. You're going to how does that happen? What do you do first in your deconstruction?
I think first should be acknowledged the energetic match I was to my husband. I believe was because part of me understood we would get each other out. We would get each other out. And he was an interesting being for me to connect with because he was devout enough that he felt safe to me. I wouldn't have been able at the time to connect with someone who had fully left and actualized that way. I would have distrusted them and said that they're deceived or they're selfish or whatever. But he was in enough that the questioning he was doing felt safe to me, and it also felt so attractive to me. I remember the moment that I kind of like shifted from like being interested to being like, actually, I think I'm falling for you. It was actually when he made a comment about how he could see how sometimes the rules that they made for missionaries were to control the missionaries more than they were inspired. And I know that's not necessarily a novel concept for us to hear now, but for my brain at the time, it was like pinwheels of light going off. And I was like, I don't know why I really like that you said that. I really want you to explore that more. And so his just like kind of these subtle criticisms gave so much permission to look at things that I had felt my whole life, but just not felt safe enough to like actually face. I was terrified of losing my family. I was terrified of being seen as unfaithful. getting in trouble in that sense. And so he and I, pretty quickly after we got married, we started listening to all the podcasts. We started peeling layers back. We started saying things to each other like, I've never really felt good about that. Have you? No, I actually always thought that was weird. I don't think we should do that with our family. Yeah, I don't either. Let's do this instead. So, but it was very slow, I think, over years. But that was I think being together gave both of us permission to just start exploring because we had an anchor person. So it was like, I can do this now because I have somebody who will be with me while I do it instead of being totally alone, which is hard to step into that. And I really admire people who do. I was really scared.
You can almost think, well, if they're manipulating the missionaries this way, how are they manipulating other members in other ways?
Right.
And deciding whether the manipulation is good or not good, right?
Right. It's just a little pullback of more of a nuanced understanding of who are these people and what is happening and what's really being done here. But it was.
Now, were you running the numbers at all in your brain? Were you thinking, okay, this is the most important thing on earth is God's one true religion. And yet there's 7-something billion people on earth and only a few million members that are experiencing God's one true religion. He's not very efficient. Did you think about that at all?
That argument totally resonates with me. And I think, that had crossed my path. My focus was and has always continued to be the experience of women. And then by that point, to some extent, the experience of LGBT people. And so it was less because I heard growing up about the stone cut out of the mountain without hands and like eventually it'll fill the earth. And so the fact that that the church wasn't huge was not as much of a stumbling block as like the fact that I felt horrible every single time someone said something about women or women's roles or women's duties. That was an immediate problem to me that was really impacting me psychologically, spiritually, emotionally. And so for what I sought out was a lot of stuff about polygamy and a lot of stuff about like the history of this that gave me permission to say, I don't believe that's inspired. I believe this is something that humans did. But I don't believe that I have to believe that this is for me anymore.
Right. And you're named after one of the women that are mentioned in the Bible, but I don't know how many women are mentioned in the Bible. Is it like a dozen?
I think there's more women in the Bible than in the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, the Book of Mormon only has like 4.
Yeah.
And then it's groups of women, like the daughters of the Lamanites or, something like that, or the daughters of Ishmael.
Yeah.
Right. But like the individual names, not very many.
And even looking at those traditions at some point, they just completely cease to be interesting for me because there are actual goddess lineages and there are actual ways of existing even now in feminine power that are much more, I really love to kind of focus on that because I just don't really think the Abrahamic religions have very much more for me. I had so much immersion in the cloistered way it was done to me in the 90s. I really prefer to just enliven myself with what I find beautiful and resonant now.
That's right. And so when did you start learning the things that you need to know for your current practice? Because you had to sort of make a career shift.
Yeah. And I think I can combine some threads with this. So it was a slow process over years that we are leaving. So it wasn't like one moment. Like there were a few years where I was kind of shifting, but I still maintained some threads of belief. But something that started happening really quickly for me is the way that I think that having a baby also opened me up to this. The way that I related to women, experienced women, spoke about women completely changed. And it was like people talk about having a spiritual awakening about any kind of thing or an epiphany. I had the epiphany of the power and the beauty of women. And my inheritance had been that there was a lot of criticism. There was a lot of, I think, competitive energy, which I think is so, for me, I believe it's really connected to this literal inheritance of women having to share their husbands and not having enough resources. I think, and that's directly in my line. I have a grandmother who the first wife set her bed on fire while she was giving birth, like to try to kill her. And she had to live in this little shed out back behind the main house with her 11-something children. She had to bury her babies. On the way to bury one of her children, the U.S. Marshal came. So this woman who just lost her baby had to crawl in the bench of the wagon while the first wife and the husband sit on top of it. She has to hide because she's the second wife. And so when I think about that trickling down over time, like it makes sense why it's not a super safe place for women to even be with women in the church, right? There's
generational trauma.
Generational trauma. There's not going to be enough. It's a crab in the bucket energy. And when I really opened my heart to releasing some of this ideology, I couldn't believe how I wanted to just adore and love and support every woman I met. I felt like just the goodness of the things that they desire to create, the way that the vision they have for the world. And so I started with my friends creating kind of healing circles, but women's circles where we would experiment with doing ritual for ourselves. We experienced like, what does it mean to like honor a new life coming or a miscarriage, like in community, like with touch and with sound and with songs and with sharing. And so we started creating these spaces that were really kind of bringing in some actual like divine energy, in the sense that like the true treasure, the true offering, like the deepest part was really able to be present there. And I loved how much there was to work with in just letting what was already there really shine. And so that was kind of where I started doing ceremony and ritual. And some of it was things that we'd read about and wanted to try, and some of it we just were making up. But we created this really powerful community of women. Ostensibly, it was a postpartum support group at first, but ultimately, nearly all the women who were part of that ended up leaving the church, which I'm very proud of, or just to be a part of that. So it was like kind of this birth was a part of it, and bodies were a big part of it, and just being in the experience together and feeling the richness of that. And so, in a sense, like that's where my current philosophies are really forged about just the preciousness of life, the incredible creative potential of human beings, the mythological potential we have to like take our own lives and the story of our lives and our growth and development really seriously and find the magic in it. Like what is the ordeal? What is the gift? What is the fire brought home for the village from the things that we've learned? And so in that way, I really started living in that space of kind of the mysticism and the poetry of life are real. They're not as they were told to me, but I'm finding myth and poetry that are even more powerful as I live into.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, here sexuality had benefited humankind for hundreds of thousands of years, even maybe millions. And then we have these Abrahamic traditions that basically close off the women's abilities, to be equals and to be, contributors to the clan, and all these things. It's just so horrible. It's really. Do you feel it's part of your mission to sort of help people reclaim sexuality as part of our humanity?
My mission is liberation. And I think that can look different for different people. And when we talk about sexuality or sacred sexuality, for me, like the expression of that with partners, like that has less to do with returning to the ecstatic nature of a human being before conditioning sets in and before kind of the default culture sets in, that we're beings of ecstasy, and also that we have the potential to be in bodies that are nourished by pleasure really all the time. It's been something that is an incredible power that's been really manipulated. But a lot of the work I do is about coming into the body, coming into the experiences of being in this body all your life, everything you were taught, everything you started to believe about yourself to protect yourself, to try to control what was coming from the outside. And then really, what does this being need to thrive? What does this being need to be in connection and to be in like what is available as the deepest joy? So those are the processes and the practices that I take people on, because I do see it as it's a restoration of what's possible just by being a sentient being on this planet. And the story that I was given about like life and the plan for life and why it exists and what we're up to, I really find that story to not have any beauty in it that isn't in the human body in a micro sense. Like if macro sense is like you have your own planet, now you're creating worlds, there's tons of planets and you're populating them with your spirit children. It's like, and you've been chosen by life to exist, because the part of you that was the egg in your mother's body when she was growing in your grandmother's body has existed now for decades, and it was the next one that was about to be menstruated, right? Like I would have been my mother's period in September of 1983, but my dad got there just in time. And so when I think about that, and I think about like how rare a chance it is that I'd exist at all, I feel like life is this glorious gift. And also that anything that I've been taught that has separated me from my understanding of like really I am actually a magical being just because I exist. Like any ideas about worthiness, I think like that little seed is the thing that is inherently worthy and inherently worth it and inherently like deserves to be the fullest expression available to it in whatever it wants to experience in life. So I really like to go to the tide pool of the body's memories, sensations, processes, and from there like create universes within this person and create galaxies and innumerable concourses of whatever within the parts of this person, because there is always that much there, and working with it creates a map of coming home.
That's right. And it brings everything to the present. And what's it called when you're in the present? It's called mindfulness.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
everything is now and now and now.
So I'm thinking that we could end the story here for you, and we can talk a little bit about your practice and how people can get a hold of you and things. And I'm almost thinking that we could do another episode where we talk more about like what a first visit with you might be. So I'll be like the guinea pig of help me, Rachel.
100% would love to do that with you.
Yeah. And so, so tell us about how people can get a hold of you, and we'll include links in the description below. Everybody go below and click, but also say it verbally so people can just do searches or whatever as well.
Well, I have a landing page on Psychology Today, and I have a little landing page with my info on aboutme.com. So we'll add those links. But yeah, if anything in this sparked curiosity for you, I always love to talk with people and explore. And I consider myself really to be, so I have my background is in mental health and social work, but at this point, like, I feel like what I do with people is less traditional therapy and more like holding a mystery school space. It's like this one person becomes the universe, and we just explore wherever the energy is calling us. And it's been a really beautiful process to meet people at the points of life transition, if it's like divorce or reconciliation to a spiritual lineage that's feeling like an identity is shifting. I love to meet with people in the crisis of change and just really empower. This is your moment for your creation story. It doesn't have to look like anyone else's or like anyone else has ever done, but you deserve to be able to be everything that you are.
We mentioned some words like somatic. Explain what somatic
so soma referring to the body and the processes of the body. So the interoception is like the felt sense of what does it feel like inside. And so somatic work is a lot of going to the sensations, embodying the sensations, and then seeing what the mind is doing with that area of the body. So it can look like meditation. It can look like breath work. Sometimes there's just practices of staying with something, and where you put the attention on it long enough, it's like if suddenly something will click and you'll say, oh, I know what this is. I know what this is. I know what it's saying to me. And yeah, so, and Soma is always with us. And so it's kind of magical that it's not like preparing for a presentation. It's just like literally what is happening in this moment will be a map to the conscious and the unconscious. Any wounds that you have, any desires that you have will make themselves known if we just keep talking about the body. It's like it will all be there even without those questions.
And so, what other sort of philosophies around counseling are in your realm of your practice?
Mm-hmm. I really like to work with, honestly, intention with parts work. So this idea that we are all the ages we've ever been, that we contain those versions of ourselves, that they're available to do work with in the present, as well as like all the future versions of us that will ever be, like kind of a sense of the universe in one being, and being able to travel within that and explore within that and name things. It can be so powerful to understand yourself from the inside out rather than trying to hold yourself up to a standard from the outside in, if that makes sense.
That's right. I'll say that my 13-year-old self is ever present.
Is he the one who picked the tie-dye?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And other things, right? And so I actually had this feeling when I was 13 that I knew everything, that I was old and I was grown up, and it's the point where the world sort of came to me. There, it still was coming, but it felt like I was there, and I almost look back as it was my height of maturity. It's like I was young and I hit 13, and then everything's been back to immaturity since then. as a why I'm playful still, right? And so some people that are very responsible don't enjoy that in me, but they have to tough it out.
I love seeing that playful 13-year-old and that moment of clarity that you described.
Yeah. And so, like, my wife and I did something called emotionally focused therapy. And so that gave us some words that we can use, some vocabulary to help us.
Yeah.
Didn't solve all of our problems, but it put us on a better path. And that's actually, like I mentioned before, at the end of COVID summer, I had listened to more and more podcasts and was starting to understand the ramifications of being lied to in the past by authorities.
Yeah.
And then what that impact really meant to me. And I was learning a lot of facts about history in the church and other things. And so I approached my wife by saying, you can stay in church, you can pay tithing, but I'm going to go crazy if you don't know what I know. I need you to know what I know, and you can keep doing whatever you want to do, but that's the only way I'm going to remain sane. And so because of that, she chose me a lot of times, say, instead of the church or whatever. And so that was meaningful to me back then. And so there's different forms of therapy. Have you ever worked with somebody and said, hey, you know what, I'm going to refer you to somebody else because that's sort of what would be good for you? Or do you find a way to fit the philosophy you have, or do people self-select already?
So I think, generally the last few years since I've been in private practice, I tend to draw people to me who kind of hear something about me, and I'm not for everybody and no one is for everyone. And so I really trust that process of selection, but also it's totally fine to, I think, refer out when that's desired, or when there's like a clear need of you'd be served by someone with specific expertise here. But I would say generally the people that find me, kind of, there's something that resonates because there's a kinship or a sense of connection. And so I think that's been less of a thing the last few years since I've been more in my specializations. But also, like, I encourage referring out if that's desired, and that there's kind of a discussion, because that's best practice in some cases. So it really depends. But yeah, I love to draw in the people who my work speaks to what they want for their lives, and they know it.
Is there anything else you want to say about your creativity, that the way you express yourself, where people can find other things about you? Or
Oh, well, I have a Substack where I write, and at some point, I'd like to create more content specifically about what I do. But this is part of that. We've made content today, Gene.
Yeah. So you're going to write a book someday?
I would love to write a book, and specifically the book I'm hoping to write is an erotic memoir of just tracking all the experiences that I've had, because it has been such a beautiful bloom. And I'm happy, I mentioned this to you, but I think out of all the human beings that have been on planet Earth, being in a controlling religion is an experience a lot of them have. Like, probably a high percentage of humans who are born on this planet are sexually controlled or controlled through shame or some kind of thing. And when I look at that, I think, so it's not so rare to be born into heavy conditioning or however you get to it, but it is really rare to get out and be able to find community and support in that, and transform and shapeshift and change into something else, and live in a way that your parents didn't know and your ancestors didn't know. That is a huge, beautiful, amazing gift. And so I feel like that's what I want to express in that erotic memoir, is like the whole thing has been a gift, including and even the contrast of like feeling really shut down to feeling really, really open in a way that has happened.
Okay. And just like the buddy system, you've expressed that to us and our audience, and we can't wait now for you to fulfill that book so that we could read it someday. So
thank you for that.
All right. So it's 2026, early in 2026. I remember thinking when I was young that there might not be a 2026 because Jesus was going to come before that. I mean, there still would be a 2026, but we might have some other way of counting the years, right? Because the millennium was going to happen, but it wasn't going to be the same system of weights and measures, I'll say. But anyhow, so yes, thanks so much for sharing your story, and we will have you back on at least once, and probably a second time. Well, for sure a second time once you write your book as well.
Thank you. I'll get on it. Thank you.
That's right. And that commits me to maybe podcasting for another year or 2 or 3 or 10.
You must promote my book. So
I can't leave podcasting until you write your book. So we'll be connected till then, right?
All right. Appreciate it.
Thanks everybody for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Do all the things, and we'll see you next time.
Yes. Beautiful to be with you today.